He's dangerous.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975. They escaped the asylum, but not their fate. It was more than a movie. It was a rebellion. A war inside four walls. Between freedom and control. Madness and obedience. A man with nothing to lose. And a nurse who'd already taken everything. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest wasn't just a film. It was a masterpiece of pain. Loud, raw, brilliant, and absolutely devastating. It won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. It gave us one of the greatest antiheroes in cinema history. And it introduced a cast so heartbreakingly human. You forgot they were actors. But here's the part they never put in the credits. One by one, the people in that ward started to vanish. Not in fiction, in real life. The nurse? Gone. The loudmouth? Gone. The sweet old man? Gone. Some died young. Some died forgotten. Some carried the weight of this film. Until it crushed them in silence. This is the true story of the actors who brought One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to life. And then quietly. Tragically. Flew away. Louise Fletcher, the nurse who controlled the ward, but couldn't escape time. She didn't scream. She didn't hit. She didn't chase anyone down the hallway. But she was the most terrifying villain in movie history. Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched wasn't just acting. She became the face of quiet, institutional cruelty. Cold. Controlled. She could crush a soul with a glance and a clipboard. And for that performance, she won an Academy Award. The kind of role that gets etched into history. The kind that never lets go. But here's what most people don't know. Louise Fletcher almost didn't get the part. Director Milos Forman auditioned multiple actresses. Most too dramatic, too obvious, too theatrical. Then came Fletcher. Quiet, measured, polite. She didn't raise her voice. But she made the room freeze. He cast her. And she made film history. Before Cuckoo's Nest, she was a struggling actress. In and out of roles. Juggling auditions and rejections. She paused her career to raise her children. Came back. Fought her way in. Then came Nurse Ratched. And the world hated her for it. Audiences couldn't separate the character from the actress. Fletcher once said, "I didn't get many roles after that. People didn't want to work with Nurse Ratched." Imagine that. You win an Oscar. And it becomes your cage. In real life, she was nothing like Ratched. She was witty, kind, thoughtful. And the daughter of 2 deaf parents. She grew up communicating with her hands. Learning compassion in silence. But Hollywood didn't care. She was locked into the image she made iconic. So she faded. A few roles here and there. Some TV, some B-movies. But the glory never came back. On September 23, 2022. Louise Fletcher died in her sleep. Age 88. No scandal. No big headlines. Just a quiet exit. Exactly like the woman she once played. She left behind one role. One legacy. And a generation still haunted by her stare. Louise Fletcher didn't need fire or fists. She ruled with silence. And in the end, she left in silence, too. William Redfield, the gentleman in the ward who knew he was dying. You remember him. Smart, calm, eloquent. The man in the ward who didn't yell. But always seemed to understand exactly how broken the system really was. His name was Dale Harding. And he represented the kind of pain that doesn't explode. It decays slowly inside a man. And behind that character was an actor who lived the same reality. William Redfield. Redfield wasn't new to Hollywood when he stepped into the asylum. He had been acting since he was 9 years old. Broadway, radio, television, film. A workhorse. A pro. A gentleman. He was one of the few cast members who had actually spent time inside psychiatric hospitals. As a visitor, as a learner, as a human being who observed pain from up close. That's what made Harding so painfully real. But while he filmed One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, William Redfield was already dying. He had been diagnosed with leukemia. And he never told anyone on set. Not the director. Not the crew. Maybe a few close friends. He wanted to finish the film. He needed to finish the film. Because maybe, just maybe, it would outlive him. And it did. Less than a year after the film premiered. On August 17, 1976. William Redfield died. Age 49. No farewell tour. No magazine spreads. Just a man who gave everything to a story about being trapped. While his own body was closing in. In the movie, Dale Harding voluntarily checked into the ward. In real life, William Redfield never got the chance to check out. Scatman Crothers, the soul of the asylum who died gasping for air. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He wasn't a patient. He wasn't a rebel. He was the guy who smiled. Snuck people cigarettes. And reminded us that not everyone in the system was the enemy. He played orderly Tuckle. The night attendant with a flask in his pocket. And a little mercy in his heart. But behind that twinkle in his eye was a man who spent his whole life dancing between fame and invisibility. Scatman Crothers was a jazz musician, a singer, a comic. But most of all, he was a survivor in an industry that never gave him an easy seat at the table. He was already in his 60s when he played Tickle. And even then, he was still hustling. Bit parts, voice work, whatever paid. He didn't get leading roles. He got small ones with soul. And he made every second count. After Cuckoo's Nest, he found a second wave of fame. You probably remember him in The Shining, 1980. As Dick Halloran, the cook with The Shine. Transformers, voice of jazz. Countless TV shows and cartoons. He was instantly likable. The kind of actor who made you feel safe. Even when everything was falling apart. But then came the diagnosis. Lung cancer. And it moved fast. Scatman kept working. Even did voice acting while undergoing treatment. Never complained. But the smile faded. And so did his voice. On November 22, 1986. Scatman Crothers died. He was 76 years old. And Hollywood barely blinked. No big tributes. No monuments. Just one less light in an industry that never knew how bright he really was. In Cuckoo's Nest, he left the ward door open. Gave the inmates a chance at freedom. In real life, he never got that door for himself. William Duell, the man who barely spoke, and was forgotten just as quietly. You might not remember his lines. Because he barely had any. But you remember his face. The trembling hands. The half-open mouth. The haunted stare of someone who had been broken long before the film started. He played Jim Seafolt. One of the most fragile patients in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Epileptic. Stuttering. Medicated to the edge of existence. And that's exactly what William Duell brought to the role. A portrait of a man fading inside and out. Duell wasn't your typical Hollywood actor. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't have the looks, the voice, or the charm studios loved. But he had something else. Truth. He came from Broadway. Trained in theater. And when Milos Forman needed someone who could embody deep internal suffering, someone who looked like he belonged in that ward, he chose William Duell. And Duell gave everything. Not flashy. Not loud. Just real. After Cuckoo's Nest, he stayed busy, in his own quiet way. Some more films. A bit of television. But mostly, he returned to the stage. He never made headlines. Never courted fame. And maybe that's why, when he died in December 2011, almost no one noticed. He passed away at 88. From respiratory failure. No controversy. No drama. Just a soft fade. Like a dim light finally going out. Jim Seifel didn't get a heroic ending in the film. Neither did William Duell. But maybe, just maybe, his performance reminds us that not all heroes shout. Some just sit quietly in the corner. And remind us what pain really looks like. Josip Elic, the giant who was tired of being tired. You remember him. Tall. Slow. Heavy steps. Eyes like he hadn't slept in years. He played Bankheine in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A man who hardly spoke. But when he did, you felt it. I'm tired. I'm tired of being tired. 8 words. That was all. And yet it shattered everything. Because in that one moment, Bankheine wasn't just a patient in a psych ward. He was all of us. Crushed by repetition. Routine. And a world that had long since stopped listening. The actor behind those eyes was Josip Elic. A Yugoslav American with a background as raw as his face. He wasn't Hollywood polish. He was grit. He was texture. He was the kind of actor you didn't cast to play a role. You cast him to live it. Before Cuckoo's Nest, he had bounced around. TV guest spots, bit parts in westerns and crime dramas. But nothing like this. Nothing that stuck. Bankheine was his moment. And he nailed it. After the film, Josip Elic faded back into obscurity. No leading roles. No mainstream love. He lived modestly. Quietly. Just like Bankheine. Then in October 2019, he died after complications from a fall. He was 98 years old. No lights. No sirens. Just, tired. Of being tired. Josip Elic didn't go out with a bang. He drifted. Like a shadow no one realized was there, until it was gone. And maybe that's the most honest ending of all. Nathan George, the enforcer who played the machine, and then disappeared from it. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He didn't wear a white coat. He didn't have a clipboard. He wasn't a doctor, or a shrink, or a savior. He was Attendant Washington. The hospital orderly with cold eyes and controlled violence. One of Nurse Ratched's watchdogs. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just stood there, still, hard, unblinking. And if you stepped out of line, he'd drag you back into it. Nathan George played him with stone-faced precision. You hated him. Feared him. Believed him. And that was the point. But off-screen, Nathan George was nothing like the silent machine he portrayed. He was a theater actor first. A man of words, emotion, depth. He performed on stage across America, and even wrote and directed plays. He was passionate about black storytelling. About truth, art, and honesty in performance. But Hollywood? Hollywood didn't want nuance. It wanted types. And Nathan George got typed, as the strong, quiet enforcer. After Cuckoo's Nest, he took roles in Short Eyes, Clute, and other gritty films. But the spotlight never followed. So he stepped away. He spent much of his later years behind the scenes, mentoring young actors, supporting regional theater, living life outside the frame. Then, on March 3, 2017, he passed away quietly. No headlines. No retrospectives. No legacy reels at award shows. Just, gone. In the film, Attendant Washington represented control without empathy. But in real life, Nathan George was all heart. Just too far outside the system to ever be embraced by it. He didn't break rules. He just faded past them. And maybe, in his own way, that was his rebellion. Peter Brocco, the lawyer with no lines and a lifetime of Hollywood in his eyes. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he played the hospital's lawyer. A gray, tired man sitting at a desk, nodding through bureaucracy, barely blinking as real people suffered inches away. He didn't fight. He didn't feel. He was the system's perfect mirror, indifferent. He may not have had more than a few words, but his face said everything. And that's what Peter Brocco had mastered. Telling the truth without saying a word. By the time he appeared in Cuckoo's Nest, Brocco had already lived through 5 decades of Hollywood. He was a character actor. The kind whose name you forget, but whose presence you never do. Over 300 films and TV shows. You saw him in Spartacus, Batman, Mission Impossible, The Twilight Zone, and 100 courtroom dramas, westerns, and noir thrillers. He was the background noise of cinema. Steady, constant, professional. But his career wasn't always smooth. In the 1950s, during the McCarthy era, Peter Brocco was blacklisted. Accused of being a communist sympathizer. He lost roles. Lost momentum. Lost years. But he didn't stop. He just kept showing up, in silence, in shadows, in the edges of frames. He lived to 89 years old. Passing away on December 20, 1992. No fanfare. No star on the Walk of Fame. No headlines. But that was always his way. Stay in the scene, not the spotlight. Peter Brocco didn't need a monologue. He didn't need a close-up. He just needed a glance. And suddenly, the whole institution felt colder. And when he left the room, you felt it. Even if you couldn't explain why. They fought the system on screen. But life wrote the final chapter. They weren't just playing the broken, the bruised, the medicated. They weren't just inmates in a ward. They were mirrors. Showing us everything the world doesn't want to admit. Control can look like kindness. Silence can scream louder than rage. And freedom isn't always the ending. One by one, the voices that gave this film its soul have gone quiet. Candle Louise Fletcher, the nurse who ruled the ward, and was caged by the role that made her. Candle William Redfield, the gentleman who died knowing the film would outlive him. Candle Scatman Crothers, the night orderly with warmth in his smile and cancer in his lungs. Candle William Duell, the stuttering patient whose quiet exit mirrored his quiet life. Candle Josip Elic, the giant who simply said, "I'm tired," and then, finally, was. Candle Nathan George, the enforcer who vanished from the spotlight but left his mark in silence. Candle Peter Brocco, the lawyer with no lines. And a lifetime of stories behind his stare. They gave everything to this film. Not just talent, but truth. They didn't play characters. They became them. And now, the ward is quiet. The laughter has faded. The rebellion is over. But the legacy? It roars louder than ever. Because One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest wasn't about madness. It was about humanity. The fragile kind. The kind that cracks under pressure. But still fights back. These 7 actors brought that humanity to life. And though they're gone, they never really checked out. They're still here. In every line. In every stare. In every scream caught between the walls of that ward. They flew. They fell. But they were never truly crazy. Just beautifully, heartbreakingly human.